Good morning, Montana, Canada, Minnesota, and the world. Chris Hislop here from the Montana World Affairs Council. Thank you all for joining us on this Montana morning and the Ukraine's afternoon. We have a very special program for our students across Montana today, where we're connecting with our friend Mikhailo Winitsky and his son Bohdan and daughter Anastasia, who are just south of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Before we begin, I'd like to say a quick word of thanks, of course, to Mikhailo and his family for joining us, to you all for joining us, and our very generous sponsors who make this all possible at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, First Interstate Bank, BNSF, First Security Bank, Humanities Montana, Allegiance, Trail West, and the Qatar Foundation International. Thanks, everybody. So, Montana, please keep your microphones muted. What will happen today is Bohdan and his sister Anastasia will say a few words, and then we're going to open it up to you for your questions. Please chat those questions in to me or to everyone, and I will pass those questions on to Bohdan and Anastasia, because we simply get too many questions, then there's time to answer. But please send your best questions. We're really interested in hearing what you all have to say, what you're interested in. And so get ready with those questions. So I'm going to stop right there. And what I'm going to ask is our friends Bohdan and Anastasia to come on. Maybe if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourselves and what's going on around you right now. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. We're very grateful for having us. It's very important to us to tell other teenagers like us all over the world about the situation in Ukraine. And a few words about the song. We're having a war in our country since 2014, but the full Russian invasion started February 24th. And since then, we are looking for some chances to stop the war, because we all understand that it's useless, and we know that it began to it started to be a war against our nationality, against Ukrainians.
Okay, Bohdan. Thank you very much for that introduction. Bohdan, would you like to add anything to that, please?
Yeah, sure. That wasn't really a shock for us when it all began 3 weeks ago, because as Anastasia said earlier, it was all happening since 2014, and people died throughout these 8 years. But civilians didn't, and we really didn't experience the full-fledged war in our home. So yeah, we really hope for it to end soon.
Thanks a lot for that introduction. Now, I'll just say a couple more words, and then, of course, I'm opening this up, more importantly, to the hundreds of Montana students who've joined us this morning. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind saying just a few words about what is your day like today? I mean, the students across Montana, they're waking up, they're going to school, they're studying, they're coming home. Could you speak a little bit about what is your day like now?
For me personally, it's pretty empty, because we are not we generally don't go out because that can be dangerous, and there are a lot of people who try to Diversanti.
Recon groups.
There are a lot of recon groups across Ukraine, and we don't want to get mistaken for them. That happens in the war pretty commonly. So we generally stay home, and because I'm a university student, I don't attend lectures. They're all have been canceled. But Anastasia has her school life, of course, online education still going on.
Yeah. How's my day going? I wake up every morning and I just the first thing I do is taking my phone and reading some news, because we know that every hour the things are changing, and when I wake up, I'm seeking for some information that can be dangerous for me, and I'm scared every morning. I'm scared that the war is going to be closer and closer to the place where I am, and so it's difficult to live with this fact.
So while we're waiting for some questions to come in from our students, let me ask another question. A week and a half ago, we were speaking with your father, who gave us a very interesting account of what's going on around him. Hi, there he is, Michaelo. Nice to see you. In that, when we spoke with your father, right at the end, he said, I have to go. There's an air raid siren. Is that happening often? Can you tell us a little bit about that when that happens, and what do you do?
That is happening often. We immediately go to the basement after it, but it started happening less generally because the system of air raid warnings got better. So air raids actually became a more common thing across Ukraine. More common thing across Ukraine.
So we can hear, but they can't hear what's happening.
Sorry about that. Somebody has not muted their microphone. If you would kindly mute your microphones.
It's the one that says Garden Library.
Thank you. Sorry, Bodan, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the system of air raid warnings got better, and we all have this app on our phone. Never imagined that we would have this app, which will plays the siren when there's an air raid, and so we can hear it not from the outside, but in our homes too, so we don't miss it. After that, we must take shelter because something might fall on us.
So we're getting some questions in now. Let me ask one that came through. As you probably know, President Zelensky is addressing the United States Congress this morning. The question is here, hold on, what do you appreciate about your country's leaders right now?
I'd say that he's going well now, but we can't say that he was as good as now all the time, because when he came out as a president, we honestly didn't like the things, his politics, because everyone can have some appreciations or
Hate.
Or hate to some politicians, but now we're we appreciate very much what he's doing, because he knows what's going on in country. He and his party know what they're going to do with this, and we really trust him.
Yeah, and the main thing that we appreciate about most of our politicians is that they didn't run away immediately after they heard about war starting. It could have been a lot worse, but generally this country still exists because nobody tries to leave it. And that is not only about our politicians, it is about our citizens as well. Yeah, that's the main thing we appreciate.
I would like to add that not the main thing is about our politicians. The bigger parts of our of our struggle is about people, simple people that are living in cities, villages, towns, little towns, that really have fights with the Russian troops.
So another question's come in, Bohdan. Maybe this is just related to your last answer. It says, did you have an opportunity to escape Kyiv? Why stay in a war zone if you could possibly leave?
Yeah, because it's our home. We don't have a place where we can just drive away and stay in a hotel for a month. It's leaving everything behind, and that is not cool.
I'll just say a word. Thanks for that, Bohdan. Just so our Montana students know that, well over 2 million Ukrainians have been displaced by this conflict. Some have been displaced within Ukraine, others have left the Ukraine. So a big part of the conflict is that people who are affected by it leave their homes, and that is in addition to 100 million people around the world who are also displaced by conflict, to give our students a little idea about that. Another question coming in, have you seen your friends since the war started?
No, I didn't. We generally take shelters, and the social life is really tied in with social media and nothing else. Yeah, we just talk to each other through social media.
So here's a follow-on question from the same student who asks, what are your views on the way social media has portrayed the war? So could you say a few words about how you're seeing the situation through social media and how you yourselves are using social media?
We have a huge social media war right now, and we are learning to filter the information, because a lot of Russian propaganda is
Coming through.
Yeah. But about the communication with other our friends, I haven't seen them since the war started, the invasion started, and since the invasion, and I message them almost every day. The sentence "How are you?" is now equal to the sentence "I love you." So it's the interesting thing about the stuff.
Here's a question from a classroom in our capital city, Helena. They say many of us feel incredibly angry on a daily basis as we see what is happening to your country. We have to imagine your emotions are powerful and overwhelming. What do you do, and how do you keep those emotions in check? And how do you care for your mental health during times of war? A difficult question.
We seek support in our family. We seek support through our social media, but I wouldn't describe our mental health as really well. Well, my roommate died last week on the front line, and that is not something that you care about. I mean, that is the mental health is not something that you care about in these times. You just go through it because you have to.
Bogdan, I'm very sorry to hear about your roommate. Here's another question, however, a couple of them together. Could you talk a little bit about what maybe I would call basic services? Obviously, you have electricity, we're online. What about other things, food, water, etc.? Can you tell our students a little bit about that situation?
In some towns that are near the front line, there is a humanitarian catastrophe, and they have troubles with water and food because they're in the basements all the time because of the alarms. And our government is trying to figure out this problem, but we all have to understand that Russian troops don't really don't really allow to fix this problem, to fix the humanitarian troubles of those people. And sometimes a few days ago, a little newborn girl died because she hadn't had enough water.
Yeah, dehydration in Mariupol, and that is pretty shocking in 21st century. But we're okay. Where we are, there is food, there is water, everything's fine.
We have been preparing for months because before the war, and now we have all the things
we need.
So another question, I don't know if you're able to answer this in any way, but let's throw it out there. The question is, how is Russian treatment of Ukrainian citizens generally? Could I maybe just change that question a little bit? Because what many of us are seeing now is the current news of a war in Ukraine, but there is also a long history of relationship between Ukraine and Russia. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit of your own views on that relationship, and then to the question about treatment now. I don't know if you're seeing any Russian troops around you, or if you can comment on that.
We don't see troops around us on the occupied territories. Right now, they generally don't care. So people just don't have food, don't have water, have nothing, and tanks are on their front yard. And sometimes they try to take the power and
Install.
Install their government in the well, bigger cities, but yeah, generally, and they are faced with a lot of protest from the civilians. Yeah, but generally speaking, they don't care, and civilians have nothing to live from.
Chris, I'm going to add something here, if it's okay.
Please go ahead.
Your question was about two things. Your question was about past history, and it was also about what's going on in terms of the occupation. Past history is very, it's a colonial history. So Ukrainians were forcibly made into the Russian Empire and then into the Soviet Empire. And the history has, for the last 300 years, has been a very difficult history where on various occasions, the Russians have tried to make Ukrainians into Russians and have tried to convince Ukrainians that they are in fact Russian. The two languages are close, but they are not the same language. When I get asked that, I often say, well, French and Italian are pretty close too, but they're not the same language. French and Spanish are close, but they're not the same language. That's about the same as Ukrainian and Russian and Polish, by the way. Those are three languages that are kind of similar to French, Italian, and Spanish. But no one in Spain is trying to make a Frenchman into a Spaniard. And that's one of the things that is different about our area. As far as the treatment today, well, the history of the relations between Ukraine and Russia have always been very violent. There have been thaws, there have been periods of peace, and periods of cooperation. And then there's been periods like the Holodomor, where we have millions of people being starved in the 1930s by Stalin. And it was specifically done against the Ukrainians. We have times like the Great Terror of the Soviet period. And today we're going through another terror. So one of the things that we are seeing at the moment in areas that are occupied by Russian troops is, for example, Russian troops looting, stealing, and more importantly, and we're trying not to talk about this too much because it's really horrific, there's a lot of rape going on. There's a lot of soldiers, Russian soldiers, coming into villages and finding young girls and doing what they want to do with them. And that is really a terrible disaster that at the moment we are trying to document as much as possible. But as you can probably imagine, in wartime, it's extremely difficult to do. This war is very much about hatred by the Putin regime of all things Ukrainian, including Ukrainian girls, Ukrainian women, Ukrainian art, Ukrainian language, Ukrainian history, everything that makes us a people.
Mikhailo, thanks for that. And please feel free to come in. I'll just make a couple short comments before the next question, which is, of course, these things are hard to hear, but thank you for sharing them with us because this is the reality of the situation in Ukraine today. And it's important that we all hear what Mikhailo and his kids have to say about this. I'm also going to have a quick point here. When we're talking about the history of the situation, it means this didn't just happen, 2 weeks ago. It didn't just start. There is a long history to the situation in Ukraine, the relationship between Russia and Ukraine, and the relationship between us and the world. And so I think it's very important that our students in Montana understand that this history emerges in these situations right now, and it plays out and has an important dynamic. So thank you very much for sharing. Another question, this comes from, I'm going to just stand by. Somebody's got their microphone on. If you wouldn't mind, please muting your microphones. The next question comes from the Missoula International School. We have an international school here. Thanks a lot for coming on, MIS. The question is, what would you like other countries to do to help Ukraine? And I'll just frame that quickly by reminding everybody that Ukraine President Zelensky is addressing the United States Congress today. And over the past weeks, we've heard several requests for military support, for diplomatic support, for humanitarian support. But looking at it from where you are, what would you like other countries to do to help Ukraine?
The same thing that President Zelensky asks for. We talk a lot about no-fly zone because we are getting bombing constantly. Military support. Yeah, everything has been said. I cannot stretch it any further.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, another question coming in, because when we spoke with your father was a week and a half ago, you mentioned that there were other families living with you in your dacha. Could you, first of all, are there other people living with you? And maybe just a few words about generally your living situation. You know, where are you? What does it look like? Over to you.
Yeah, we've had another family in our house for a couple of days. Couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even remember. And it was quite difficult to live with them because we already have 6 persons in our family, and there are another people, and we had to learn how to separate the life of different families, because despite that fact that we were in one house, we had some chores to do and etc. And it was hard. And the second thing was about the place where we are right now. We can't say that information because Russians are deeply
Studying
the situation in the country, in towns and cities, and they can use the information about our location in their
they're for their own purposes.
For their own purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. So some more questions, and I just want to say thank you so much for your answers. These questions are coming from students who are your age across Montana. There's some tough questions here, and I will ask them because our students are interested, but I certainly understand if you choose not to answer these questions. But here's a question that we asked your father. What will you do if Russia takes control of Ukraine?
I actually saw that question in the chat pop up. Russia will not take control over Ukraine, and because we would have to die in the process. It will not. They would literally have to kill 42 million people. It will not happen.
We see that in the news here, just so you know, it's a day in and day out. We see the courage and strength of Ukrainian people in this situation. And it's certainly not the first time I think we've heard that sentiment. The next question, another tough one, but you know, we'd like to hear your opinion. A big part of the debate in the news has been about Ukrainian membership in NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Association organization. Your opinion there, it seems to be the sticking point. Do you want Ukraine to join NATO?
Well, we would like to, but they don't seem to be particularly helpful at this time. So well, what can we say? Yeah, we ask for support. We ask for it a lot, but we don't get it.
So another question, you mentioned earlier that you occasionally have the chance to go outside. The question is, again, are you able to go out, get some fresh air? If so, what are you able to do? And can you describe a little bit about what you see?
We're now in the countryside, and we have the possibility to go out and breathe the fresh air. And but people in bigger cities, they don't have that chance. In Kyiv, we have the hour of silence right now, curfew right now, and because
There's a threat.
there's a threat in Kyiv particularly, but people sometimes can get out, but they in most of the time they sit in the basements. They are in their flats or something.
Let me just add to that, Chris.
Please.
There's a curfew that has been in all big cities. There's a curfew that goes from 8 o'clock in the evening to 7 in the morning. And between those times, no civilians are allowed onto the streets. That curfew also exists in the village that we're in. So we don't spend time on the streets outside in the evenings. Because of the threat that exists or that is imminent at the moment for tomorrow, that curfew has been extended, and we will be in curfew from 8 o'clock tonight till 7 in the morning on Thursday. So we have a 36-hour curfew at this point. Now we're lucky that we are in a sort of a village rural area south of Kyiv, which gives us the ability to at least walk outside during the day, but we do not do that at night for a variety of reasons, plus the fact that we keep our lights in our houses off. So we're spending the evenings by candlelight, fireplace, and a small TV set.
So just a follow-up question to that, and to remind our guests here that the Montana classrooms are not all on the same schedule. So some new classrooms have arrived, others will be leaving. So some of the questions may sound a bit similar, but nevertheless, I think very interesting. When you talk about the curfew and other ways of receiving information, can you talk a little bit about you know when the curfew is that word of mouth, is that social media, is print and television media working? How are you receiving this kind of information?
Як ви знаєте звідки ви знаєте про комендантську годину і як проходить інформація?
Through the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a lot of communication through social media. Sometimes it's television, but generally speaking, it's messengers, channels, and so on.
And Bohdan, are you or your friends or others, in addition to receiving information, are you sending information out about your situation? I know your father has been very active in that. How about you?
I generally spread it amongst my friends and among groups that I'm a part of.
But I will say, as a proud father, that Bohdan wrote an article, kind of a blog post that ended up receiving over 25,000 reads. Excuse me, 125,000. I apologize. It was on the second day of the war, and it was about how what we are fighting for at the moment is very similar to what the American War of Independence was all about 250 years ago. And I'm very proud of the fact that he was able to grasp that parallel, because 250 years ago, the War of Independence was about freedom. And I think that that was exactly what Bogdan was trying to get at, that this is the new America. This is the new war of independence. We happen to be fighting exactly the same war with exactly, well, in a much more modern sense, with a lot more people dying, but for the same causes and for the same reasons, because Ukrainians want freedom.
When we spoke with you a couple weeks ago, Mikhailo, you reminded our viewers of the American national anthem. And I would encourage our Montana and American participants to have a look at the lyrics of the American national anthem and see if any of that resonates with you as we are talking to our friends in Ukraine. You may be very surprised that it does. Here's another question to you. What do you feel about Russian citizens rather than their leaders at this time?
We feel exactly the same hate to them because they chose this government. They let it come to power. And I think, and most people think, that they are as as guilty as the President Putin are. We think they are all the same, and we hate them.
We realize that they don't really care about the civilians that who die almost every day. They care about the economic problems that they are having because of the sanctions, and they care about the shops that are closing in Moscow, and they care about the ruble that is going down because of simple economics, and they don't deserve our appreciation. I think that.
A follow-up question on the social media. If most information is coming through the internet, can you tell us a little more about how you filter out disinformation or, lies and falsehoods that come across social media all around the world?
That is a struggle that we are all across Ukraine having, and we are doing with it pretty well, I'd say. We understand that we have a hybrid war, which is not only carried out on the front line, it is also carried out in messengers, in news articles. And we are a part of this war, and if there is disinformation, we report it, and we try to spread only accurate one.
Here's a question from a classroom who may have just joined us recently. Are you concerned about losing electricity and internet access or access to basic services? How would that affect you? And lastly, why do you think Russia has not tried to cut off electricity and internet access?
They're trying to do that. They understand that in their country, the information is people get the information generally from TVs and TV stations, not from internet. But in our country, we're a bit more conscious about where we get the information, and we check in the internet, in some chats and other social media, and then we can say that we trust the information we get. Russians think that if they turn off the TV, we'll get dumped because it's going on in Russia. and they don't even understand that we have a bit different situation in Ukraine.
On your question of electricity
Yeah.
and internet. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
Electricity and internet. Why are we not concerned? Because they have failed to do that in the past, and they are failing in it constantly. When the rocket is hitting a power plant, it is getting repaired in 8 hours, under 8 hours, sometimes even faster, and air defense systems are working. So rockets are not generally hitting it at all. And yeah, honestly, before war began, we even bought a solar panel to have electricity in case of it going down.
And a generator.
Yeah, and a generator, but it never turned on because we never needed.
Okay, so I've got one more question. It's another tough one coming from our friends in Helena, but a good one. So let's just ask this. Has the world's response or lack of response damaged your faith in the West and democratic values? How disappointed and surprised are you? Did you think there would be a more forceful intervention? If so, can this faith be restored?
Yes, we are disappointed. Well, obviously, unfortunately. Are we surprised? I don't think, because we expected even less, judging from the Western response when Crimea was taken, or lack thereof it. And we are grateful for the support that we have, and we understand that we have a lot more than we had 8 years ago. But yeah, we are disappointed.
Okay, I'm going to kind of start to wrap up here. Here's going to be my last question from our students, but I'd like to also, if you would like, give you the opportunity to say other things. Maybe some questions were not asked. Maybe you have some other things you would like to share with us. Before doing that, let me ask this question from Phillipsburg. What do you want Montana students to take away from speaking with you?
We want teenagers all over the world to react the things that are going on in Ukraine, and we want you to tell all your friends or all your acquaintances to tell them about our feelings, about our life here, about the things that we have told you.
And take more responsibility than your government. Unfortunately, I'm saying this. The US was taught to be this sort of global policeman for years, but just recently it became clear that unfortunately it stopped being it. From the situation that we see right now in Ukraine. And we'd like for it to come back. And if someone is going to take it back, it's going to be you.
I'm just going to add perhaps a little bit of a different spin on what Bohdan just said. I don't think it's just a question of being the global policeman. The United States is a country that has been worldwide known to be sort of the beacon of freedom, and the place that supposedly was, what's written on the Statue of Liberty. Bring me your, what is it? Bring me your disheartened, and bring me all the people that need help in the world, and we will protect you. Well, that's not happening. And there's a lot of people here suffering. And we're fighting for exactly the same values as you fought for 250 years ago. Something's wrong. We're asking for help. We're asking for young people. We're asking for older people. We're asking for anybody that will listen to pressure your politicians to live up to the standards of the United States. And that means getting directly involved, because there's a country in Europe with 40 million people that needs your help.
Thank you very much for that, Mikhailo. Let me just add now to our students' homework, in addition to the lyrics of the national anthem, have a look to see what does it say actually on the Statue of Liberty, and why was that written at that time. That will also give you some more insight into what is happening today. So let me just wrap up from my side before handing back over to our Ukrainian guests. I want to thank our Montana classrooms for coming on. There were a lot of new classrooms, a lot of new teachers who joined us today. This is the Montana World Affairs Council bringing you this and many other programs. If you're interested in this, reach out, be in touch with us. We've got great opportunities for you and your students to stay engaged in the world. Next, I want to quickly thank our very generous sponsors whose names you see behind me: First Security Bank, BNSF, First Interstate Bank, Denison Phyllis Washington Foundation, Trail West, Allegiance, Humanities Montana, and Qatar Foundation International. They help us bring this and so many more programs to you. So let's now go back to just south of Kyiv to our friends there. If there's anything else that you would like to tell us, maybe there are questions we didn't ask, over to you for the final word.
We thank you for having us, and we are here hoping for your support. Yeah.
I'm going to add here that you heard today, well, Don doesn't particularly want to talk about it, but his roommate last year, they spent a year together in the same room, went into the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and on March 9th, he was killed in battle. Let me say something as a father. I hope none of you and none of your parents ever have to go through what we're going through. Please try to help us.
Thank you very much for those words. And on behalf of all of us who are watching this and who will be watching it in the future, we sincerely wish you safety and good health. And we thank you so much for sharing this part of your lives with us. It really matters here in Montana that we see directly, that we hear directly, that we know what is going on in the world. And we can only do that because you came here today to help us understand better your lives and the situation in Ukraine today. So I thank you all so much for joining us. I thank all of our classrooms and teachers. Be well, everybody. Until we meet again, bye-bye.